All right. I think we're almost ready here. All right. Hello, hello, hello. So today I'm going to be talking about why the sovereignty movement, the the idea that we should all have this liberation movement that we're seeing in the spirituality world, that we're wanting less government control, less less dependence on systems and structures that are harmful, um, but that are looking like they're trying to support us. Why this call for this wave of like taking responsibility for ourselves, and that it's spiritual to take responsibility for ourselves, and that all of us should just be, taking control of our health and taking control of our lives. And if we're dependent upon these government structures, we're weak, or that we're not trying hard enough. That if we aren't able to manifest abundance for ourselves, that we're not really spiritual and we're not really doing it right. That if we're sick or struggling or have anything kind of going wrong with us, that's all our responsibility, that's all our fault, and we can heal anything. And if you just do the right things and eat the right food and think the right thoughts and find your purpose and find what you're supposed to do here in the world, and wake up, you will see how absolutely evil and corrupted every system that exists is, and you will be able to transcend everything that's ever bothered you and be abundant and be spiritual. And I want to address this because this rhetoric of personal responsibility and personal freedoms that we in the spirituality world are claiming that we should have the right to, and this idea of wanting to like completely abolish medicine or government or these structures, and then the the conspiracy theories that go along with these structures and these things being propped up by this idea of personal freedom, and that it's spiritual to be, that true spirituality is this ultra individualist thing, that true spirituality comes from each individual owning their power, and when we all own our power, we can't be victim to anything, and then our lives will be perfect. I want to speak to this because I feel like, again, there is a very real response to very real corruption. Okay, so before I even get started, I am not, under any circumstances, so please do not misconstrue this message or what I'm saying here. I am not saying that government is completely trustworthy, that medicine has never done anything bad, that these structures that are out there, education, the way that we work, the systems of society, I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that everything is perfect and amazing and we should just fall in line and listen to everything and not think for ourselves. Obviously, I hope that you would know that if you've watched any of my videos, that I am not for the system we have. Right? Like, I genuinely hope that that's clear, but if that isn't, obviously, okay? I personally, if you're asking me, don't need a conspiracy theory of epic proportions to show me that the government and the medical and the institutions that we have are run by humans who are traumatized and don't understand how things work and are therefore causing damage. Right? We don't need any more information than the information that is readily available. We know that people in government are bought out by corporations and they make decisions that lead to higher profits for corporations, and that is at the expense of human beings. We absolutely know that medicine and the pharmaceutical industry especially hurt people and take advantage of people and silence alternative cures and anything that's going to cut into their profit margin. They will, in a very barbaric way, go to destroy that. We know what happens to legitimate government whistleblowers, like people who actually have information the government doesn't want you to know. They are killed. They are sent to Russia. Like, we know they don't just get their YouTube channel taken down for a couple of days, right? When someone really has something that the government doesn't want you to know, you don't know it, or it's a big deal, right? People are, and we know all across the world, political dissenters are murdered, mass murdered, and so again, like, I am under no false pretense that the government and the structures that exist are completely for the people and we should just blindly follow. That is not at all what I'm saying, and I'm saying any we don't need to look any further than what is right in front of our faces to see that these things aren't good and that they are run by corrupt individuals. Okay? And again, my understanding of it, and I'm not asking anyone to agree with me, it's just this is what I've come to from my observation and study of human nature, is that the structures that we have and the corruption that we have going on in the structures that we have are not coming from evil genius mastermind plans for world domination. It just doesn't look like that to me. Because what we're seeing is individual people and small groups of people having very barbaric, primal, harmful ways of being. It's very, if you look at the spiral dynamics model, it's red. It's people who want power, who want resources, and who want sex, who are using their positions of power to overpower people to get those things. And to me, that doesn't denote, or that doesn't show high level intelligence. That shows trauma and people living from a very primal place. So I don't, again, I'm not up here to say trust the government, trust the education system, trust all the institutions that we have, and everything is just great, and you're crazy if you think that it's hurting people or that there are nefarious things going on. Obviously there are, okay? And at the same time, I don't trust alternative people who are massively profiting off of spouting extreme conspiracy theories that we know are playing into people's childhood traumas, that we know are inflammatory to be inflammatory, are extreme to be extreme, are non-nuanced, and have very little information to back them up, but that are propagating these very emotional trigger points that they know humanity has, right? That we can understand that we've all been hurt by authority figures. We've all been abandoned. We've all been abused. We've all had these things, and now we're projecting this onto government, and we're projecting this onto medicine, and we're projecting it out there, and we're seeing it out there, and then we're being fed this mental, like, yeah, that's right, right? Like, they're evil. There's evil masterminds who have these big overarching plans, and they're coming for you completely, and here's my $400 supplement, or here's my $400 course to teach you how to be sovereign. Like the, or just the continual understanding that the alternative news and the alternative media people are just as invested in saying whatever they need to say to get eyeballs. They are not invested in truth. They are not invested in making sure that you're informed. That's not where they're coming from. That their bottom line is the same bottom line of every other media source, which is eyeballs for ad revenue, right? So we kind of have to, my point is, Of course, we can see that these abuses are happening. Of course, we can see that the corruption is happening. Of course, we can look at it and say, well, it's real. And I can say, yes, it is real. And at the same time, we can also look at the people who are stoking the flames of these things and who are creating these like big overarching evil plan theories are also playing into manipulating an audience. They are also profiting off of people being in a state of fear and then offering a pseudo solution of libertarianism and buying their product. It's the same, it's two sides of the same coin. It's not actually leading to freedom. It's not actually leading to liberation. And that is what I want to talk about today. Is what is actual sovereignty? The sovereignty that we're talking about, where people in the spirituality world especially, we have such lofty ideals of what we want society to be, where people are free to be themselves, where people have resources and they have the capacity to boost their own immune system through healthy living, where they have the capacity to um, manifest abundance for themselves and create, right, being able to create a sustainable way of life for themselves, where we have people where we are less and less and less dependent upon centralized power because we have more people in the community taking communal responsibility. And I, again, am all for that. That is exactly my point of view. That I am not abolish everything because it's all this big evil plan that's going to take over the world. Nor am I trust it all and everything is great, because clearly, look at me. Like, I don't participate in the system as much as I possibly can. And I am someone for whom the system really didn't work. And so it would be very hypocritical of me to stand up here and say, oh, just trust the government and trust medicine. It's all great. It's like, no, it isn't. It isn't all great. It absolutely isn't. But at the same time, I'm not here to play on these fantastical, get you super afraid and scared and feeling out of control, like the world is completely out of control, manipulating you just so that I can then sell you my $400 program or make sure that you keep watching my broadcasts because I'm going to keep dripping you the truth and then give you essentially nothing at the end other than feeling like you're informed so you can go tell other people that you're informed. But like, what does that do? What power does that actually give you? What solutions are being offered other than, again, come to my course, take my supplements and it'll make you healthy and it'll make you sovereign. But like, how and why and for what reason? That's capitalism. Okay? So my point, if we really want to understand what is going to be required to create this sovereign humanity that we want, which I also want, if we want to create a system that actually works for people, which again, I want that. Because again, I'm one of the people that the system really didn't work for the way that it is. But I also can appreciate what does work about it. I also can appreciate where we're seeing trauma, not evil. We're seeing people who don't understand how things functioning at the top. Like I say, I believe that people in government and medicine and all these things who are doing these horrible things are not evil genius masterminds. They are very clearly mob boss style people who are just doing whatever they have to do in the moment to get their power, their money, and their sex. Like, it's very clear to me that it's not evolved. It's very barbaric. And so that, to me, it's not, it doesn't appear like it could be a coordinated long-term plan, because that would require intelligence that it doesn't appear that they have. And that's my kind of take on it. So I want to talk a little bit first about some of the very harmful messages coming from the spirituality world around this, such as if you're healthy, you can heal your body of anything. that sickness doesn't exist. And again, this has nothing to do with the current situation. Okay? These messages, these ideas have been around since I've been in the health and wellness industry. Right? I recently came out and shared that I have Asperger's syndrome. And so this is a genetic condition that I've had my entire life, that I didn't create, that I didn't do to myself, that makes me incredibly weak and vulnerable to the natural world as much as the societal world. Okay? If I had been born 200 years ago, I probably wouldn't be alive right now. Okay, so that's the first thing. So like these ideas have been around forever in the health and wellness world. That if you just do all the right things, if you take care of your body, if you take care of your mind, if you take care of your stress, if you do all the self-love, if you do all your spirituality right, you can transcend any physical illness. You can transcend any mental, emotional struggle you've got. You can transcend any trauma you've had. Just don't go into victim mentality. Take your power. And if you're struggling with money, or if you're struggling with oppression, or if you're struggling with all these things, you can just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get yourself out of it. These ideas have been around way before now. Okay? Like I said, I got into this health and wellness stuff over about like 17 years ago. And these ideas were around then. And I was incredibly gaslit, I'm learning now, and emotionally essentially abused by the spirituality world that told me that the problems I had with my digestive system, the problems I had with my health, the problems I had with my anxiety and my depression, and the struggles that I had as a human being were all my fault. And that if I was really spiritual and if I was really doing the right things, that I should have transcended them by now. I should be perfectly healthy by now. And I should be perfectly happy by now. And I should like literally be like transcended and never be sad again and never be triggered again and never have pain again and never have any of these things ever again. And if I did, I wasn't doing my spirituality right. I wasn't doing my health stuff right. And it was all something that I should feel guilty and bad for and ashamed of. Because if I was really doing it right, I should be healthy. I should be perfect. Okay, now, and for a really long time, I've been here trying to say, like, I don't believe that that's true. If you're struggling, if you're sick, if you can't figure things out, if you're going through stuff, if you're human, I've been here being like, first of all, validate yourself. It's not your fault. And second of all, I always knew and have always said that like we need to be understood. We need to be held into the light, and it's more complex than this. And now I'm understanding what that more complex is. And that is, number one, we all have a lineage that is a mixed bag of things. And we didn't just appear in our childhoods or appear in our adulthoods with 100% awareness of pure cosmic light and everything that's alignment and everything that's health and everything that's perfect, and then just choose to damage ourselves or choose to have a false perception or choose to have a way of being that's not serving us or choose to even like resist ideas that would help us to have the emotional reactions that we do to other things. And we didn't just pop into the circumstances we're in. And second thing is we didn't all just pop into equal circumstances that give us all the exact same capacity to heal or to integrate or to get to a new place. And some of us are just doing it and some of us aren't. That's not reality. So I want to talk a little bit about my reality. Okay? And so first and foremost, like I said, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, and so much of what I have done for myself in the sense of like taking responsibility for my physical health when medicine couldn't help me, taking responsibility for creating my own company and creating a situation where I always pledged that perception trainers would always be like a non-profit. Like I don't I'm not clickbait. I'm not ever going to make this something where I can make massive amounts of money from it. And I did that for myself, right? I built this company, and I always said I would have another form of income to support this company, and I always will. And so that I never have to compromise on what I'm doing here. And that's a decision that I made. I got out of a lot of trauma from my childhood, right? Like I was unintentionally very much abused by pretty much everyone in my life for most of my life because we didn't understand that I had Asperger's, and so I was not only forced to live in a world that I do not functionally have the capacity to thrive in. I was shamed and guilted and blamed and rejected and tortured in a lot of ways because of that. Like it wasn't just I had to put up with it and learn to deal with things that I didn't have the capacity to deal with. It was like the fact that you can't do this made the people in my life hate me and reject me, the people that I needed, the people that I was dependent upon. So and I have done a lot of work on myself, my spiritual, emotional, all this stuff to integrate that stuff so that I'm not living a life of constant trigger and trauma and pain and shame and guilt. And then it enabled me to do the work that I needed to do to work really hard to build this life for myself that is very outside of the norm that works for me. So like I say, I got diagnosed with Asperger's, and like most of the mental, emotional, spiritual work they do with people who have autism, I've already done. I did it by myself. And I figured it all out on my own because I didn't know I had autism, and I was just following what I needed to do, and in the process figured out that like this is how we all do it. That if all of us could just acknowledge who and what we are and what our traumas are and what we need and all these things, we can build lives for ourselves that work for us. And I did that. And so I had a lot of things working against me. Yeah, my physical traumas, the physical things that I was born with. I don't produce adequate hormones. My body has never been able to digest food. I was not raised in a culture that understood what was going on with me, and I was antagonized for it. I was not able-bodied. I was incredibly sensitive, and everything overwhelmed me, and I had to learn to be okay with all of it. Like, there were a lot of things that were in my way. And like I say, if I had been born 100 years ago or 200 years ago, I probably wouldn't have survived my birth. It was a traumatic birth, and it required intervention. I probably wouldn't be alive. And then even if I had survived my birth, without modern medicine, without the tools that we have in our modern world today, I also would probably be dead. Natural stuff wasn't going to do it for me because genetic problems, like from literally day one. And if we didn't have science, and if we didn't have medicine, and if we didn't have all these things, I was very vulnerable to viruses and bacteria and all these things. Like, even if you want to go so far as only believing in the terrain theory, that viruses and all these things are only affect you if you have a shitty terrain. Well, I was born with a shitty terrain. I didn't make my terrain shitty, right? My body was weak. So do we really want to say that people like me don't deserve to exist? Because when we talk about this personal responsibility, and if you just do the right things, you will be healthy and everything will, okay, well, first of all, again, I could have done all the natural things possible. Like, even when we first came over to Asia, I got a parasite, and I tried to fight it naturally for a month, and I couldn't, and I couldn't, and I couldn't. I took an antibiotic, it was done, and then I never got it again. Like, I've never had a problem again since. But, so, if we're saying that we should all just take responsibility for ourselves, and especially this rhetoric in the natural and spirituality worlds, that it, like, right, if something comes to take you out, it's natural selection, and it's the strong will survive. And if you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're really taking responsibility for yourself, and you're really doing all these things, you won't get sick. And if you do, well, That's nature taking its course. Okay, again, do we really want to say that about humans? That we don't deserve extra protections? That people who were born, or like I say, had childhoods and circumstances that they were born into that damage them, that they don't deserve extra help, or that extra help that is unnatural is somehow not spiritual. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. And then the next thing to consider is all of the things that I had going for me that allowed me to take responsibility for myself that I did not earn. Okay, so I was born in Canada. So, like, the fact that I can travel to pretty much any country I want most of the time, literally because of the land I was born on, the Canadian passport that I hold, I can go anywhere I want. That is not universally true. Did I do something to earn a Canadian passport that someone born in, like, the Middle East didn't do? No. Okay? I was born in a country with resources. So I always had access to food and water and shelter and clothes. So that survivalist challenge was never part of my reality. I learned English as a first language. I got to go to school from 0 to 12. I was born in the age of the internet, where I had access to all this information, and then the ability to create a job for myself that really fits my specific way of being through nothing that I did. I did not earn that. I did not work for that. I did not create that. I did nothing except for was born and had all this stuff handed to me. All of these foundations for this life that I live were handed to me because of choices that other humans made long, long, long down the line, way before I existed. Right? My personal sovereignty. So even everything that I have been able to do for my body and for my mind, and to create this career for myself that actually works for me, and this life that actually works for me. Yes, I worked really hard. Okay? Absolutely. I took responsibility for myself. And I didn't ask for a handout. I worked shitty jobs, low-paying jobs, because I couldn't afford to go to university, until I worked my way up, as in, like, I created my company on the side. I always worked on the side. I was going to school. I was doing all this work, even while I was sick and not able-bodied and all of these things. And I saved money, right? We didn't have cable. We didn't have a car. We didn't have expenses. I didn't party. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do drugs. I didn't have children. I literally had rent and food that I paid for, and then I worked, and that's how I made this life. And so I worked really hard, and again, had I been born in a different country, had I been born and taught a different language, had I been born under a completely different governmental regime, what if I had been born in North Korea? Exactly how I am. But all these freedoms that I have, not available. What if I had been born in a poverty-stricken, where there is no infrastructure, village in the Middle East somewhere? It wouldn't have mattered how hard I worked. I probably would physically not have survived. And even if I had physically survived, what are the chances that I was going to find a good life for myself, given how my brain works and my body works, and what would be required to survive there? The chances would be very small. And again, is there something inherently more worthy about me than any of these people born in those circumstances? And to me, I can't, with an honest heart say yes. And again, I understand that there are people who believe that we were past lives and we chose these things for ourselves and all that. And again, I if that's your belief, that's your belief. But I don't hold that belief because I don't have an experience of that being true. I don't know. I've never been dead. I don't remember my past lives. I I have no way of verifying that there was something that I did in some other lifetime that earned me this experience versus someone who has a much less opportunistic experience. Okay, so my first point in this is yes, taking responsibility for yourself is important, but to think that even the capacity to be able to take responsibility for yourself is a privilege we all have that is universally available and that people who are not doing it are simply choosing not to is ignorant. It is ignorant. It is not true. And we are then discounting the shoulders of giants we are standing on. This is what I know to be true. That all of my privileges, because I have privileges that made it easier for me to be able to do the work to create a life that works for myself, to be able to help my health, to be able to all of these things that are not universally available, that I did nothing to earn. That came from the struggle and the effort of people who came before me. And I don't believe myself to be inherently more valuable than people who were born into different circumstances than me, who don't have those things. That's how the world is right now. That's the world of chaos we live in. It's not resources and goods and opportunities and the capacity to thrive is not universally available. It's not equally spread among humanity. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit for a second about the blue zones, because I feel like they are giving us a clue into what is actually going to be required for this world that we want to live in, where more and more and more humans are resourced enough to have what they need to survive. Okay, because right now, in the health and the spirituality world, we're essentially being sold that it's capitalism, right? That taking responsibility for yourself and taking responsibility for your health in the way that people are saying this is how we do it, with healthy food and entrepreneurship, or finding your passion and your purpose, so that because when you find your passion and your purpose, you will always be inspired and you will always find the job and the universe will have your back and you will be abundant. Like that idea. The idea that if you do what's right for your body, you'll be healthy. You do your spiritual practices and you'll transcend all your emotions and your traumas and your triggers, and you'll be this like perfectly enlightened human being who, all this stuff. We're being sold that this can be sold to us. That the answer to this is more capitalism, more free market, more individuality, right? Us taking more individual responsibility. So less and less collectivism, more and more liberalism and individuality. And again, I just want us to all take a step back and just be like, right, and they're selling this to us for $99.99 or $77.77. You too can take their course. You can buy their supplements. You can get in on their coaching program, and they're going to teach you how to be sovereign. They're going to teach you how to heal your own traumas and then transcend them. They're going to teach you all these things. And then again, you will be this perfectly functional person in this system that we have, right? You're going to be the kind of person that thrives in our capitalistic system that says you shouldn't need anything from anybody. And you shouldn't really have to give anything to anybody. It should just be you taking care of you. And if you're taking care of you, you'll have all this abundance and you'll have all this perfect health. And so you don't need anyone and no one needs you. So then we don't need government, we don't need medicine, we don't need social programs, we don't need any of this stuff, because if we're all just taking responsibility for ourselves, we'll all have perfect lives of abundance and health, and no problems. No. Okay, let's look at the blue zones. This is something that I think is very important. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue zones. Ikaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, region in Sardinia, Loma Linda, California, and Nicoya and the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. Okay. There have been many books and things written on these blue zones where these people are living the longest, healthiest human lives we see on the planet right now. They have an extraordinary number of people who live into their hundreds, and above that, they have a very high quality of life. So they're not just living for a long time, they're living long, healthy, happy lives. Okay? And books have been written and they have been focused on their diets, right? We're all like, eat the Mediterranean diet. Maybe it's the olive oil. Maybe it's the wine. Maybe it's the blah, blah, blah. But the problem is that in these 5 different zones, the diets could not be more different, right? The diets of the Okinawans in Japan, they eat like almost nothing but sweet potatoes. And then in Sardinia, they eat tons of pork and seafood and wine. And then in Loma Linda, California, they're vegan. And then in Costa Rica, same thing. They're very much omnivores. So it's like, okay, they're all eating real food. That's definitely a component. It's food from the earth. They're not eating processed stuff. But that doesn't really tell us much about what it takes to live long, healthy lives. So let's look at the things that they actually have in common. So these 5 areas of the world, what do they actually have in common? Number 1, highly resourced natural resources. Okay, right? It's not about the soil. Look, they live in isolated tropical or subtropical areas that is rich in natural resources. Lots of food, lots of things to build houses out of, they are the natural resources that they have available to them are high. They're not struggling for food, they're not struggling for water, they're not struggling for shelter, they're not struggling for any of these things. Okay, second thing, they all have modernized to a degree sanitation and industrialization in the sense of infrastructure. Okay, it's not complete tribal, in the middle of the jungle, nothing modern about them. They have toilets, they have roads, they have water systems, they have plumbing, sanitation. They have all of the things of the modern world that took us out of the food chain. Because this is something we have to remember. Yes, humans lived one-to-one relationship with nature for a very long time. And we didn't have lifestyle diseases, partially because we didn't live long enough to get lifestyle diseases. We didn't live long enough to get cancer and heart disease and diabetes. We were dying in our 40s. And we were, like, again, this if you are susceptible to a virus, it's just natural selection taking you out. Okay, well, again, think of this. In history, that the immune system is somehow naturally supposed to just be able to be this perfect thing. That if we're exposed to something and we're really healthy, we will be fine. Okay, that is not factually correct. We know that pre-industrialization, that indigenous tribes, that we can't blame 5G, we can't blame toxicity, we can't blame modern whatever society and stresses and all of these things on their demise. They were supposedly these perfectly natural, in communion with the earth, immune systems. And what happened? When this tribe met this tribe brought a disease that this tribe had never been exposed to, that entire tribe died. The immune system isn't perfect like that. When we're exposed in large numbers to viruses we have never seen before, without medical intervention, when we're completely in alignment with nature, we have plant medicine, we have all the ancient tools, the entire tribe gets wiped out. We know that. So again, this fallacy that if we were all just perfectly natural, there would be no sickness, there would be no disease, there would be no illness, there would be no death, is false. Like, especially like in the natural birth world. Again, without medical intervention, I would be dead. My mom might be dead. We wouldn't have survived my birth. And this is why in more impoverished nations, families have massive amounts of kids because they need them for workers, but the likelihood that they're all going to survive is essentially nothing. That they're going to survive their birth or their childhood. They're natural, but they don't live. So these 5 places are not tribal. They are not pure connection to nature. They have infrastructure, they have medicine, they have sanitation. Okay? So they're naturally resourced. They have the modern technologies that took us out of the food chain. So they're not tribal. They are insular. All of these places where the people are living these really, really long lives, they do not have racial diversity. They don't have diversity really at all. They have been very, very insular communities. Everyone in their community is seen as a part of the community. There aren't others. They live as a community, they work as a community, they function as a community, and they don't have a lot of outside influence. These places are generally not set up for tourism. They're not set up for visitors because forever they have been isolated. And in Loma Linda, they're a Seventh-day Adventist cult. Not to say cult in a bad way, but like that's their culture. They're an insular group who aren't participating with other groups. And that is something that is very hard to hear for us, but we need to hear it. Part of their success comes down to they are isolated. They are a community that doesn't deal with others. They don't have others. Now, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I am not saying that is how we should be. I'm saying as far as human psychology has evolved, we don't do very well, if you haven't noticed, with the idea of others, especially when we feel like there's scarcity. So these cultures have the opposite of that. They have abundant natural resources and nobody coming in to take their shit. So they live very, very, very low stress lives. That's the other component. They are not taken by capitalism. They are the exact opposite of capitalism. They are pure socialism in the sense that the community takes care of the community. The community takes care of the community. And everyone works just as hard as they need to for everyone in the community to have enough, and that's it. They are not entrepreneurs who are working themselves to the bone. Every single one of these cultures specifically say, we find a thing that's our purpose in the community. We do just enough so that it supports all of us. And then we spend the rest of our time with our families doing the things we like doing. So if we're really going to look at what does it seem to be that supports the human life in so again, these places have very low government. They have like no police. They have no crime. They have very little rates of illness and even mental illness. People are essentially not traumatized in these places. And so people are not vulnerable in these places. They're taken care of. Everyone has enough. Everyone has what they need. They have no crime. They have no mental illness. They have very little physical disease. When someone has an illness, the entire community pitches in. If the store owner doesn't want to go to the store today, they don't open the store today. Like literally. They have this thing that we say that we want. No government, no organized, there's no centralized power, no police, no crime, low levels of mental health, or mental unhealth, physical unhealth. Why? What are the actual things that are causing this? Again, they live as a community where they are highly resourced. No one is coming for their shit. Everyone takes care of everyone. Everyone's allowed to find that thing they like doing, their purpose within the community. They do that thing. They offer their thing to the community so they feel a sense of purpose and meaning. And then they live the rest of their lives enjoying whatever it is that they enjoy. Horseback riding, hanging out with their friends, playing games, shooting the shit, creating stuff, playing at the beach with their kids. That's what it looks like. It's not ultra-libertarianism. It's not individuality. It's not capitalism. It's not more goods. They are the happy that we want to be. And they are not rich. They are not millionaires. They're not billionaires. They're not in abundance. And they're not trying to be. They're not trying to be ultra productive. They're not trying to figure out how to do, like, grind all the time. They don't pretend that everyone is the same and that if someone in the community can't do what this person can do, that this person doesn't deserve to live. Everyone gets taken care of equally, no matter what you give or don't give to the community. So if we're really going to say we want sovereignty, we want people to be able to take responsibility for their health, we want people to do all these things, it's not going to happen in our capitalist society. It's not going to happen through more individualism. And of course, it's not going to happen through more government control or being overpowered either. It's because, so now here's the thing. Here's the reality. Humans don't all live in one of these blue zones where there's naturally abundant resource, where there's no threat of the other coming to take your resource, where all life is valued, where we have the capacity to eat natural food and live close to nature and be with our family and not have exposure to outside threat. Right? Like, that is not the world we live in. Those are not the systems we have created. So if we can say we do have examples of what it looks like for human beings to live a life where they're getting their needs met, and therefore they live long, healthy lives, and then we compare that to what we're doing, and even what we are trying to say is our solutions to our limited capacity to do these things, we have to look at it and say we're not hitting the mark here. We're off because we have an example of what things can look like, what it looks like for human beings to have what they need so that they live a long time and they live happy. So it's not capitalism. It's not more government. It's not any of these things. It's us needing to recognize that the way humans thrive is together. The way humans thrive is together. We need to recognize the utility and the importance of some of our modern inventions. We can't be naturalist fallacy people. It's not realistic and it's not reality. Just fully returning to nature is not the answer. Unless we really want to go Darwin and have people like me not survive. Because in nature, I would not survive. In tribal life, I would not survive. And I know a lot of people like me. And so I want to say, like, right, people like me who are systems thinkers, who are not physically strong, who are, let's look at systems, let's think about long-range things, I'm big picture, not very good at details. Am I useful to society or not? Are people like me useful to society or not? Are people who have different perspectives and don't fit into the capitalist society useful to society or not? People who have genetic weaknesses they're born with, should I just be exposed to a virus and allowed to die? Or do we want to say, no, medical intervention has done some good things because it saved people like me? And then I can do natural things that help. Okay, so that's one thing. Next thing, do we want to say that people who are simply born in areas of the world and places in the world where they're unresourced, or they're under authoritarian governments, or there's war, they're not given a first world education that would allow them to build a different life for themselves, are less valuable than the people who were just born into these privileges? Or do we want to even say people who were born in the same country with less privilege and more opposition, where the structures that are there are literally set up to make life harder for some groups of people to find success and enough, because other groups of people need to have so much more power, sex, and money? Do we want to say that that's okay? Or do we want to say, no, we need to move towards something more equitable, where no one can be that rich? Because there's no evidence to support that being that rich is possible without all of these people not having what they need. And then when that happens, we have traumatized people on both sides. Everyone's traumatized. I believe that. I believe the people at the top who are going for money, sex, and power are traumatized. They were indoctrinated into this system, just like everyone else is indoctrinated into the system. They had to give up their humanity in order to be where they are. So we look at the Jeff Bezos and the people out there and we're like, how could you have all that money and be so evil? They were indoctrinated, just like you were. They were required to give up their humanity to have that success. And that was in them probably from birth, because that's how the system is. It rots all of us. I don't see evil. I see corruption of the human soul by a system that none of us created. I don't believe there are evil people. I believe that there are deeply traumatized people from the very birth. They weren't presented with the option to be equitable before they were conditioned, before they were programmed, before they had all this emotional response, before all this stuff where they could actually make the choice. Because we all know this. Everyone's had the experience of someone has offered you the right thing to do and you can't do it because it's so against your conditioning. It's so against your nervous system programming of this is what I have to do to survive. You're in such a state of fight or flight that you can see that you're hurting yourself or someone else and you can't stop yourself. You're not evil. You're conditioned and you're programmed and you're traumatized. So these traumatized people traumatizing these people, upholding this traumatizing system that they were indoctrinated into that traumatizes a whole bunch of other people, it's trauma all the way down. So what is the solution? And that's why I say this work that I do is part of the solution. Us learning to integrate our own traumas and to love ourselves safe and be our own safe place and validate our experiences. Stop gaslighting ourselves. Look at our history. Look at our lineage. Look how we didn't create any of this stuff for ourselves. We were born into this shitty system that's shitty for all of us. So how can we just, the people of us who especially have the resources to do this work, need to do it. It can't be up to the people who are so oppressed by the system, and it can't be up to people who are so indoctrinated and lost in it. It's going to be us in the middle doing this work and then slowly checking out of the system to create a more equitable system, which is going to be us taking less for ourselves, finding our enough, taking less for ourselves, and then creating more equity for everyone. Like I said, like perception trainers, I'm never going to charge $4,000 for my mystery school, which I could. It's a 2-year program. There's more information in my mystery school than I've seen in any online program. And I will charge $10 a month. And if people don't have that, they can message me and I will give it to them. Because I can. I don't need more. And that's not a virtue. It's because I want a world where everyone is safe to be themselves. And I know that taking just enough for myself and then doing the work on myself that I need to do to not be manipulatable, like truly, like I don't see evil, not in the government, not in medicine, whatever. I don't participate in those things that are causing harm to others. And the more that I see that, the more I come out of that. And then I contribute to the things that I want to see. And I don't think that charity is necessarily the answer, but definitely redistribution of resources. And just me taking less. If all people just took less, the system would collapse. These systems of oppression don't work if we're not all on the hamster wheel, continuing to support it. We want to support people who are doing good work, small businesses, all these things, yes, so that everyone can have enough. And maybe we do a little bit less work and we make a little bit less money, but then we don't need the Starbucks and we don't need the medications and we don't need all these things that power these corporations we say we don't want to have power, that then control the government and control education. And if we stopped needing them, by stopping over-consuming because we don't believe in ourselves and we hate ourselves and we think that capitalism is the answer, right? And then more involvement in communities. Just find the people around you and your place within that, right? Like the more we're getting disconnected, social media can be used for good. If we use it to connect to people in community where we can support each other. Like be a support. I need some money this month. Crowdfunding, like that kind of stuff. That's where we need to go. Where we're not asking for centralized power necessarily to take care of us. Because we are actually being responsible for one another. So that's what I'm saying. We want to get rid of centralized power. Then we either need to decide, are we Darwinism, and we're just going to let most of the people die? Because we all can't have abundance in this system. We all couldn't have abundance in nature. Or are we going to say, okay, let's take collective responsibility then. Let's be people who take responsibility for my community. Let's be where I have more, I can give more. Where I have the resources, I'm not going to take any more than I need. I'm going to think globally, not individually. Okay, I have good food. I have a safe place to live. I have a stable job. I don't need more than that. I don't need the 400 TV subscriptions and the car and the second car and the new belts and the bag and all these things. What if I just stop buying stuff at that point? And again, it's not to say never buy anything. It's not to say don't participate in capitalism at all. It's not black and white. It's just, can we scale back and then participate in community more? If we really want less socialized power, we have to have people who are less dependent on something to take care of them, because collectivity isn't taking care of them. We don't just get rid of government and everything is great. Right now, we get rid of government and a whole bunch of people who are unresourced will come for your shit because they don't have it. And we don't have systems in place. They're not evil people. They're humans who want to survive. And they live in a system that didn't support them. So now they're vulnerable. And then corporations and government take advantage of them. So if we don't want that, we need to think of other solutions for supporting people who can't make it in the system. Which means, I think, an overhaul of the system. We have to decide we value all human life for how it is. And so how can we work a new system where people are supported by the community? And they're doing it in these blue zones. It's possible. Redistribution of resources. We have the technology now. But there are a lot of us, and it's complicated. So this is why I say I get it. I get why the message is just take care of yourself, liberalism, whatever, because that's simple. I get why it's just get rid of these evil corporations, and you're a sheeple if you follow it. No. They're unresourced people who are easily manipulated because they don't have what they need. And then these groups promise that they're going to give them what they need. And in exchange, the vulnerable people give them power. And they're not vulnerable by choice. They're not just choosing to be victims. They were born into a system that doesn't support them, that doesn't give them an equal chance. It's very reasonable. It's logical. It makes perfect sense why we are where we are. So again, if we want something different, we need to become community-minded. We need to take less for ourselves, and we need to think, where can I actually be a member of my community? Where can I heal my traumas and do my healing work so that I can find my enough, so I'm not susceptible to capitalism and taking so much more than I need and being caught in that loop, so that I can be more collective, and so that I'm not so focused on myself and my rights and my abundance and my, and you're coming for my shit. And you're just lazy and you're a victim, and you people who are getting sick and believing the government and all these things, you're against me. No. We need to have compassion for these people, for everyone. Why are they like that? Why are they in that situation? Why is the system what it is? And how can I, as an individual, start to create something new? So I hope that this will be a start of a conversation. I know I'm not offering a perfect solution, but I'm saying let's look at the systems and what would actually be required for this liberation we want. It's not going to just be getting rid of the evil government. It's going to be it's going to be resourcing people so that we don't have desperate mobs, so that we don't have crime and poverty and all of these things. Because they're not just things that happen because people are bad. They come from humans just doing whatever they can to try to survive in a world that's not helping them survive. And then they fall victim to these entities that promise them liberation that are never going to give them liberation because they just want money, sex, and power. So we need to transcend wanting money, sex, and power. Finding our enough. And then where can we get involved in our communities? So like I say, like for me, this is this is what I have to give. These are my gifts, these are my talents, and I'm not looking to get rich. I'm not looking, right? You'll see, none of my videos are clickbait. None of my videos, I don't do this to get famous or popular or whatever, because I don't care. I don't need more. And I'm very privileged to be in a place where I don't need more. And I'm not going to exploit that. You're never going to see me offering my $1,000 a month coaching program because so you can have this life that I live too, because you probably can't. Most people can't. I acknowledge my privilege. And then I'm going to do with it whatever I can. And I'm going to continue to learn where I can be better and I can do more. Forever. I'm not perfect. And I don't claim to be, and I don't claim to have all the answers. This is what I have to give, and this is what I'm going to give. So I'm trying to live the example. I'm as minimalist as possible. Because I believe in that. Because if everyone lived like me, there would be more than enough for everyone. And that's the world I want to see. So I hope you'll think about this. That capitalism and people who are susceptible to the system and all, it's not what people are saying it is. That's not spiritual. That's not taking the full view. Let's look at why these things are actually happening and what it would take to actually create a new world. And that's going to be collectivism. Not Marxism, not erasure of the individual. It's appreciation for the individual. It's deep appreciation for the individual. It's each individual is very different. We're not all the same. We can't all be given the system and then just everyone pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do your work, and if you work hard enough, you'll have success. Not true. We have to appreciate that we are different. And then we have to decide. Do we want a homogenistic society where everyone has the same skill level and those are the ones that survive and everyone else that couldn't just dies? Or do we want to say we value the diversity? And again, we can't unmix ourselves. We can't unmix. We want to get rid of racism? We have to decide, okay, there's enough for everybody. How do we make sure there's enough for everybody? How do we look at these systems and we say, we're not going to favor anyone over anyone else? And the systems were built on that. It's going to be a new foundation we need. It's going to be a lot of looking at what's not working for all of us, and therefore it's not working for any of us. Long term, it's not working. Because again, the people at the top sold their souls. They may have money, they may have sex, they may have power, but at what cost? It's sad. The system isn't working for any of us. So let's take a page from these places that are working and say, okay, it's not capitalism, it's not individualism, it's not more money, sex, and power. It's not abolishing structure. It's creating a new structure that works for how humans work, which is that we're individuals, we're unique, we all don't have the same capacity to survive. So how are we going to take care of each other and give each other room to be what we are? Okay? So I hope you enjoy. I'll see you in the next video. I love you so much. Thanks for being here. You're worthy. You're worth it. You're perfect. If you don't fit into the system, there's nothing wrong with you. And you're deserving of love. And you're deserving of life. And I see you. And I think that you're valid. And I think everything you bring is needed. So I want to see a world where there's more for you. And that's why I offer what I offer. And again, I offer most of it for free because you deserve it. All right? I love you. See you in the next video.